The whole of Christian witness is expressed in hope. It springs from the truth and from that earth-shattering newness of the Christ event, when Jesus, the very manifestation of God's love in our midst, overcame the empire's monopoly over death and overcame death's monopoly over humankind to secure our unbreakable connection to God once and for all. Boy, that should make us hopeful. Jesus' resurrection gives us hope. And when things get tough, we hang on to that hope. It's ever on our minds and ever on the tips of our tongues, in the songs, in our prayers, in our worship, that we are a resurrection people because we follow a resurrected Savior, which means we live in hope. And so since our faith is anchored in the experience of Jesus' resurrection, we live proclaiming, in Paul's wonderful words, if God is for us, who can be against us? Or as that other poet and prophet said, you can't touch this. Nothing can touch us. It will be all right. We even sing their song, it will be all right. But the reality is that things do touch us. That sometimes things are not right and do not go right. We are fragile. Our bodies are subjected to disease. Any number of things can go wrong in this life, even as we say and testify that we live in hope. Life happens and it gets hard. And hopelessness can overcome us while we're trying to muddle through the mass and stuff of life. This past week has been one of those things that has brought it into sharp relief. This moment when hopelessness has been the order, where hopefulness has been challenged by threat, by violence, by discrimination. It started even last week, it started with the assault on the existence and dignity of our trans siblings. And then came the attempted attack on a black church in which the murderer couldn't get in, so went to a local grocery store and shot 2 African American customers. And then we started to hear about the targeting of many of our national leaders with pipe bombs, only to wake up to the deadly shooting at the Tree of Life synagogue. And one would be on firm ground to question our claims of hope, of being hopeful. The churches in Pontus and Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, to whom Peter wrote the letter we read today, found out just how hard it is to be hopeful in the midst of living in an empire. Oh, it wasn't easy to be a learner and follower of Jesus Christ. They were a marginal people, a minority people of faith, followers of an executed peasant rabbi, trying to be church and trying to be faithful in a world that scorned and harassed them. And we know about those early churches because it wasn't easy to be talking about Jesus. It wasn't easy to be talking about faith in the way that they did. And so they were reviled. They were talked about. They were reproached. People spoke against them all the time. And so it shouldn't surprise us at all that when Peter checked in on them, they said, "Where is the hope you've been talking about?" You see, when Jesus ministered to them, he was a living hope walking among them. He was the bright spot in the midst of oppression and domination. by a foreign power. He gave them justice when their own country brought only injustice. He healed them. He comforted them. He provided for them. But when he was arrested and crucified, his disciples and followers, including Peter, must have believed that all hope was lost. But on the third day, their hope lived. Their hope lived. And so Peter writes this letter to remind them of that hope, to remind them that they have hope because Jesus lives. Peter tells them to remember what exactly it is about what they're being hopeful about. Because of who Jesus is and what Jesus did, they have been born again. Now, he doesn't say it that way. I love the way Peter says it. We often hear people talk about being born again, but Peter talks about, said, we have been given a new birth into a living hope. A new birth into a living hope. A living hope. Hope is qualified. It's not just hope. It is a living hope. It keeps going. It's alive. We've been given a new birth. Jesus' death and resurrection affected a new birth. They did not have to, and here's what I want to get. This is where I think religious folk get it messed up. We don't have to recite magic words. We don't have to do any of these things that these rituals, these special rituals people have come up with. The death and the resurrection affected a new birth into a living hope. And Peter wrote to remind them of this. And then Peter said, we are heirs to an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, unfading. There's nothing on earth, nothing that anyone can do to them, nothing that can stop them from receiving what God has secured for them. This is their hope. And if this is what Jesus has wrought, then hope is not passive. And this is where I was having trouble. Because sometimes we think like hope is passive. I'll wait for the by and by. I'll wait till it gets good. I'll wait till it gets better. But no. Hope is not some passive, or it's not intangible. It's not pointless. If their inheritance is secure, then they can take the risk of living, of loving, of serving, of getting out of their funk and saying, I'm going to live anyway, no matter what you throw against me. I'm going to live anyway. I'm going to keep fighting for justice when you keep throwing injustice at me. I'm going to keep screaming for peace if you keep coming after me with the gun and the knife. I don't care how many AR-15s you have. I'm going to come at you with prayer. My inheritance is secure. It's secure. So Peter tells them to get your mind straight, gather yourself, and get to work. Oh, that's what that 13th verse means. Get up, get out of here and get yourself together. Your victory is secure. God's got your back. You can do what you need to do now because God's on your side. Don't you sit there and worry about what's going to happen. You do something. Because Jesus did something. Do something because Jesus did everything you needed Jesus to do. Do it. And you live and serve and love. Peter is not asking them to feel good because we didn't feel good this past week. He didn't ask them to feel good. It's not about having a positive attitude. There's nothing wrong with a positive attitude, but that's not the hope we're talking about. Hope is not complacent. It is not a call to wait for it to get better. Hope is not an invitation to get lost in dreams and a wish fulfillment. Hope is a force of will born of the confidence in who and whose we are. Confidence in who and whose we are. When I was 12 years old, I had a couple of bullies, and they would come after me. But the good thing is, I had an older brother And I would walk. As I I had to pass his high school. I was in middle school. I had to pass his high school. And as the bullies would taunt me and come after me, I would talk big. And I would go at them, mouth just running. And I would even feign to hit back because I knew in a few minutes we'd walk by that high school and he'd be right there ready for me. That's the image I want to leave with you. When the world comes at us, and they will, when the empire trades in on violence and discrimination and hate and tribalism, we will counter it that we have a victory, we have an inheritance, we have a hope that was given to us by a peasant rabbi who went to that cross willingly that we might live. And so we can face you now. We can make claims on a love and a mercy and a grace that you don't seem to understand because we have someone backing us up. And so we'll fight back for what is God and what is good because we know who and whose we are. It can be hard to be hopeful now, especially when we look around and we see people of faith actively fomenting and reinforcing racism, sexism, homophobia and transphobia, xenophobia, violence, hatred, especially when people use their God-given freedom as a pretext to do evil, to hurt others, to bind others. And just when we think we've gotten past one dust up, it seems like we wake up to see another dust up. Once we think we've gotten past one attack, then we find the administration developing another policy to define our transgender siblings out of our existence. And just when we think we've gotten some peace, we see another insult targeting some of the most vulnerable people among us. And just when we think that we've had victory, just when we thought it was going to be okay, we see another attempt to roll back the gains our society has made in LGBTQ rights, in voting rights, in economic equality, in securing a social safety net for those who are vulnerable. We see families breaking up, friendships dissolving because our politics has become so divisive and so hateful. And we have to be honest. This hope thing seems totally inadequate. It doesn't seem like it can do what we need it to do. What good is this new birth into a living hope when times are so dark and hope seems lost? How are we to live in a cultural context that has become more toxic, more intolerant, more hateful, more violent? How are we amplifying our identities as Jesus people, as people with a secure inheritance? How are we showing it? There is hope. There is hope. There is hope because God acted decisively to bring us that hope. Because of God's grace and mercy, our hope is an invitation to act out the faith we've been giving. And when I feel most hopeless, it occurs to me that God's gift to us is secure. That my inheritance, our inheritance, is imperishable, it's undefiled, it's unfading. So I can take the risk to love, to care about what our world is going through, to care about each and every one of you. I think that was the power of MCC too. That no matter what people said about LGBTQ people, and they said a lot, and they still say it, no matter how much religious people tried to deny the humanity of God's queer people, MCC bore witness to the imperishable and unshakable faith of God's gift. And that remains our task today, all God's children. To let the resurrection power Jesus bequeathed us inspire our faithfulness and our imagination, to fill us with a hope that inspires us to action. Action. Oh, I know you're saying, Pastor, what do you mean? What does hope in action look like? Oh, I'll tell you what it looks like. It's anything that we do that counters the narrative that says that it's all over, or that only hate and violence is the order of the day. It's anything we do that brings hope to a hopeless time. It's like making friends. That's a hopeful act. Falling in love is a hopeful act. Welcoming the stranger is a hopeful act. Generous hospitality at all times is hope in the middle of hopelessness. Working out our differences is a hopeful way of being in the world. Standing in solidarity with those who have been attacked, targeted, or rejected, that is hope. It is powerful. It is subversive. It bears witness to the God that loves all God's children no matter what. That is hope. It is active. It is visible. It is inspiring. So when you hear someone say, have hope, interpret it to mean, get my mind straight. Get up. Get out of my funk and do something. Amen.